What's going on, everyone? It's Justin here, and today I've got my review of the iPhone 15 Pro Max as my daily phone. It's a device that I've brought around to take photos, use for day-to-day work, and I would consider this a perspective from a prosumer who spends about 9 to 10 hours of screen on time a day on my device. I feel like I've really been able to test it, let a few updates come out, and in this video, we're going to be talking about some of the hardware improvements, the material, some of the early issues that were addressed, as well as the camera tech, and overall where it stands in the lineup of amazing smartphones in 2023. Whether or not you should go ahead and purchase this phone if you're looking for a new one, or if you're coming from a previous generation iPhone, whether or not it is worth the upgrade. And if you guys want to see Apple videos as soon as the devices come out, just make sure you go ahead and subscribe to the channel, drop a like on this video, and leave a comment down below of your favorite feature of the new iPhone. But without further ado, let's just go ahead and get started. So for context of those who don't watch the channel on a regular basis, I would consider myself a prosumer. I use my phone a lot for work, and I would consider myself a relatively heavy user with about 9 to 10 hours of screen on time. Social media, editing photos, also capturing photos on work trips, and generally speaking, the phone is essentially the most important part of my daily uses. I use it even more than my computer, so I feel like we really did put this device through its paces, and as someone who has used the iPhone for over a decade now, I've tried all these different devices throughout the lineup in different sizes, and this year I ultimately decided to go with the iPhone 15 Pro Max 1TB model as my daily model. I did have the iPhone 14 Pro last year, but I figured it was time to jump back to the larger iPhone because a lot of the talk is around titanium. This is made out of raw titanium, and there's all these scientific videos of how much titanium is in there, whether it is more durable, but generally speaking, the reason why I switched to the larger device is because it is lighter. It is about 10% lighter than before. The 15 Pro Max weighs in at about 221 grams, and the phone itself feels amazing in the hand. The build quality and design looks really similar for the most part. It is still like the same camera placement, and aside from like subtle changes of the camera lip and stuff, rounded edges, it just feels more refined, which has kind of been the trend in the past few years, where if you pick up these three phones or see them in public from a distance, you're not going to notice a major difference. One of the biggest changes last year was in the dynamic island on the top. This is a really good use of this space. Face ID has been a big part of the iPhone lineup for many years now, and it works great, but it does take up a lot of space. So instead of having a notch, Dynamic Island has increased in functionality, especially with iOS 17, and I think the adaptation in the past year from developers has been pretty good. The bezels are also about 30% thinner, and that's something that I don't really notice as much as I notice how nicely rounded the phone is, but honestly, I don't really feel a huge difference from last year's design, and that is to be expected. It does feel better in the hand, it is lighter and noticeably lighter, and I feel like it's the first phone in a while that I'd be willing to use without a case, and I also like the fact that it has a satin finish throughout the edge, and the titanium models all look incredible. These are like aesthetic details, but the other big talk is a USB Type-C. The iPhone finally has it, and it's been a good change. I've been trying to kind of balance between USB-C and Lightning cables for quite a few years now, and the USB Type-C not only allows for, a more mainstream charging experience when it comes to unifying all of your tech products beyond just your smartphone, but it also gives you faster transfer speeds. And this iPhone has a USB-C transfer speed of 10 gigabits per second, and I've already been utilizing that a lot by importing photos that I've taken on my actual photo camera instantly, and just being able to transfer and post to social media right away. So generally speaking, USB-C has been really good, and even though it does seem kind of minor, I do like the change. The other one is the action buttons. It's a customizable button on the side that replaces the mute switch, and it allows you to toggle quick functions such as do not disturb, the camera, or you can even like set certain commands, and it's really a customizable button that you can essentially do what you want with it. So that's kind of it when it comes to the hardware of the iPhone. There has been talks about the overheating as well, and I would say I did experience it a little bit in the beginning, where in wireless charging scenarios as well as heavy usage, but the recent updates of iOS have been able to address that, and I did notice that being fixed as well. So when it comes to the general usability of the device, it's been able to go into my workflow relatively seamlessly. Coming from an iPhone before, I found that everything was very familiar as expected, but the refinements when it comes to the iOS 17 experience have been noticeable in some aspects, and in conjunction with the new chip and the new hardware, I think I've really enjoyed this flagship phone, and I think it's one of the first years where I don't notice any major flaws where I was already waiting for certain things to be fixed in the next generation. Yes, there are always features to request. There are other things that Apple can continue to push, but I do believe that it is a very complete experience overall. The phone has been very fast, very responsive, and that's been the case for many years now. But iOS 17 has made some small refinements to issues that I've had with AirDrops in the past, also unifying the messages experience overall, and stuff like notes and how it ties in with macOS Sonoma are generally quite minor updates, but ones that are much appreciated. And the adaptation of the dynamic island, especially in the past year or so, has been really good. If you didn't have dynamic island last year because you held up on the update, then I think this year is a really good year to finally introduce it to yourself. And if you go with the iPhone 15 and 15 Plus, you're gonna get the dynamic island as well. In addition to that though, anything that you throw at it, you're gonna notice that coming from last year, it is a relatively minor upgrade. But if you're doing tasks that include like video exporting or photo exporting, it is somewhat noticeable. But if you're coming from like the iPhone 12 or 13, that is where the differences are going to be more significant. As for the display itself, it is still the Super Retina XDR OLED display, and it has a peak brightness now of 2000 nits. When you're in the auto brightness and you're outside, it will increase that brightness to reach that peak to allow you to still be able to see what is on your screen. And that is super handy because even screens that are 1000 nits a lot of times in peak brightness, especially in the summer, makes it a little bit hard to see things. And so that is nice, but otherwise the display itself is pretty much the same. It is a 6.7-inch screen. I like how the bezels are a little bit smaller, but not too noticeable, and the overall form factor, especially on the larger phone, is a little bit smaller as well. And even though it is subtle, as someone with small hands, I definitely do notice it when I'm holding the iPhone 14 Pro Max and the 15 Pro Max side by side. So before we move on, I want to talk about one of the apps that I've been using for so many years now, and it is essentially the central hub of how I run my business and what serves as a second brain. I'm sure you guys have heard of it before, and that is Notion. I've done videos in the past talking about my workflow, my Notion templates, as well as what I use in my day-to-day productivity apps, but Notion is a central hub of where we have all of our video queues, the status, deals that we're working on, and sponsorships. And recently they launched Notion AI, which is a revolutionary tool that is built in directly to Notion that allows you to utilize the latest AI tools to help generate stuff like titles, emails, and ideas, as well as bringing that second brain ability of Notion to the next level through AI intelligence, which has been a big part of productivity, especially in the last year. Recently though, Notion actually launched Q&A, and it is a revolutionary feature that provides instant answers to questions using information from across the Notion workspace, and that is important for trying to reference past information, maybe meeting notes, and especially for repetitive tasks. It can really learn over time and also speed up the process of everyday tasks for any business owner or individual out there. Q&A goes beyond traditional AI chatbots by understanding your business, previous decisions, and meeting notes to provide accurate and relevant answers. For example, Q&A can actually increase your productivity by saving time and problem solve for you in various work scenarios, such as no longer having to send a coworker a message, and instead you can find the answer right in your workspace. And for example, in our video queue, we actually have all of our video statuses for each campaign, and so we can actually ask what we've listed the status as and know what to work on next. And that is just one of many real-world examples. Q&A is like having a librarian that can look through everything you've ever written in Notion, and it's like having your own executive assistant that you can bug 24/7 with questions. So if you guys want to go ahead and check it out for yourself and you're enrolled to Notion AI, it is a feature that you can get started with today already in your Notion workspace. So join the waitlist now to get early access, and I'm going to drop a link to everything down below. But now let's go ahead and talk about the cameras. And this is a department that every company has taken a different approach at, whether it is focuses on like AI, having as many lenses as possible, crazy resolution, or zoom. And Apple's kind of been on different parts of the spectrum. They've been the leader in the video space and capture for many years now, and they've continued to extend that lead this year. And their main camera was always pretty good, I would say in the top 3, but it didn't have any elements of it that were completely different on paper or from a functionality standpoint. They just really focus on the fundamentals of taking great photos, allowing you to pick between different photo styles, and also giving you the raw option of 48 megapixels, which is more than enough for most people out there. You really don't need 200 megapixels at the end of the day, but I did feel like the 0.5 camera, as well as the zoom camera, was a department where they seemed to lack a little bit in the past few years. This year on the iPhone 15 Pro Max, you finally have a zoom lens that is a 5x optical zoom, and it looks really good. I found that the photo quality was great on it, and 5x is, a decent focal length. Sometimes I do enjoy having the 10x as well, and a hybrid zoom of up to 10x would have been nice, but being able to capture a 5x photo at 48 megapixels in RAW and being able to crop in from that is still great to have. But I think what I was more impressed by was the video. The stabilization that you get at 5x really does utilize the intelligence and the processing to really lock in on the subject. And even though in like the live view, it might not look like it's locking in, as soon as you play back the video, I was really impressed by the actual stabilization of the 5x lens. The other aspects of the camera include the main camera. I would say the main camera has some minor improvements, but if you're coming from last year's iPhone, you're not gonna notice a major change there. It was already a really solid main camera that captures great video and great photos. The portrait mode was also pretty good, and the 0.5 camera this year is one that, saw relatively minor updates. Both the main camera and the 0.5 camera are able to do better in low light by quite a significant amount, and I noticed that, but I think a lot of that is also thanks to the processing in conjunction with minor hardware improvements. In these photos and video samples that you guys see right here, they're in more low light ambient scenarios, such as the concert or the tennis match, and even taking it to a bar where it was pitch black. I was pretty impressed with the processing and what it was able to do there. And the lens flare issues have also been addressed to some degree, where you used to see that green flare for many years. It's not like fully fixed, but I think it does look pretty solid, and low light performance on the iPhone definitely leans towards the natural side. They don't try too hard to bring out all the shadows and all the details, but instead push the limit of what it's able to achieve to the best of its abilities that still looks relatively natural and something that is what I would call postable. This year's video has some improvements in terms of the Apple log. And this codec is something that I really didn't think much of at first, but after utilizing it and seeing what people have created with it in conjunction with ProRes, I really think this year's iPhone is the one that you're able to create like movies on, because you can just plug in an SSD, record right to that, and have all the content go externally. The file sizes were massive, and last year you had limitations of the internal storage of the iPhone, but with USB Type-C and the 10 gigabits per second transfer speed, being able to record to an SSD really unlocks the potential of utilizing the Apple log in conjunction with the Apple ProRes tech to be able to record some amazing video. So if you're looking for a solid case for your iPhone that has plenty of functionality, one that you can go ahead and check out is the Torras U Pro O Stand R, and that is a 360-degree MagSafe stand case. It is a cool case because it not only protects your phone overall by having surrounding protection that goes all around the edges and a really solid lip for lay on the table design. The O Stand R is one very specific feature that is handy because it is more functional than a pop socket. It allows you to grip your phone a lot more easily just from general usage, but you can also find a comfortable holding position by rotating the 360-degree element on the back, and it is also nicely built out of metal, so it's super durable. But on top of that, you can just lean it up, or you can also set the perfect position when you're just like sitting on a desk and want to have your phone propped up to watch a video, for example. So all in one case, you're able to do all of these things while being able to charge your phone via MagSafe. It is also made out of a TPU material that is super slim, durable, and provides excellent grip. So if you guys want to go and check this out for yourself, I'm going to drop a link down in the description section below. But now onto the battery life on the iPhone. And this is something that I've struggled with year after year, going between larger models and smaller models. But this year's iPhone 15 Pro Max has a battery size of 4,442 milliamp hours. And it is still classified as all day. And I found that I was able to get an all day battery life. That is essentially a work day. Like I would say from 8 a.m. to about 7 p.m. it's able to last, but I do have to put it on the charger by about 7 p.m. because it gets down to about 15 to 20%. So The battery life does live up to its claim. It is what I need, and if you're someone who uses your phone a lot, the larger iPhone is gonna be the one that you're gonna wanna go with, but it isn't really an improvement or a big improvement from what we've seen in the previous generations. So what is my overall experience with the iPhone 15 Pro Max? And as you can probably tell, I'm pretty happy with it overall. It's a phone that is perfectly slotted into my workflow, my travel workflow. I don't feel like it is too heavy or bulky just because of the minor improvements of the weight and the size. But for a phone with a 6.7-inch display, it is definitely noticeable whenever they're able to shave off a bit of size and weight. The display is something that is pretty familiar to what is before, and I love the rounded edges. And the camera is really good. I mean, I use it on all the work trips. I'm someone who really puts the camera through its paces with over 30,000 photos on the camera roll. And for social media and daily posting, I'm very happy with it. And I also love the transition to USB Type-C. Being able to transfer photos to it right away is nice, but elements like the battery life, haven't really impressed me in any aspect, and I can kind of say that about the camera as well. And that's not because Apple didn't make any big changes, it's just that I do switch phones every single year, and coming from last year's model, it was already a pretty well-rounded phone with some refinements that had to be made, which were mostly addressed in this year's device. So if you're coming from a phone like the iPhone 12 or iPhone 13, then yeah, you should go ahead and buy the iPhone 15 Pro or Pro Max, but you're probably gonna get a better value in most scenarios out of the iPhone 15 Plus or the iPhone 15 because it has all of the great features of the iPhone 14 Pro and Pro Max, but it also has the design refinements that you're gonna find on the iPhone 15 Pro and Pro Max. If you guys enjoyed this video, make sure you go ahead and drop a like, subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you all in the next one.